What's up, everybody? I am your host, a hot teacher who loves Halloween and house calls, and that is my co-host, a creepy little girl who lives in the walls. And welcome to episode 3 of our spooktastic Halloween special, where all month long we cover movies that take place on or around Halloween. And this week, we bring you a film that is draped in October fall vibes, Sam Bodin's Cobweb from 2023. So I remember watching this when it came out and not being super impressed with the story, but one thing I did find was done really, really well was the atmosphere and the vibe. This is very much a Halloween movie.
Yeah, I've been waiting to do this movie for quite some time. The atmosphere is incredible. They do a really good, gloomy fall vibe. The color palette to this one is almost so muted that parts of it look black and white, except the orange.
Oh,
Except
yeah. Orange sticks out, yeah.
The pumpkins and the trees and stuff, and it's like a muted orange, but it literally, there's certain scenes in this movie that almost, if you glimpsed at it, you would think it was black and white outside of the orange that sticks out. And it makes it so, it just gives it that Halloween feel. Almost like when we talk about, Gretel and Hansel.
Yeah, oh, yeah, Gretel and Hansel, but amazing movie.
Yeah, how they do, they're really black. They do a lot of the black and then accentuate the oranges real bright. This is kind of the opposite. This is almost grays and whites with a very dulled orange that's just pops out of the screen, and it is very, very Halloween. I actually like the story too, and I don't dislike the story at all. I think it's a very simple story, but I think the cast, the main cast, the actors are incredible in this movie. I think it's Anthony Starr.
Anthony Starr and Lizzie Kaplan are amazing in this.
Yeah. Their dynamic and their chemistry, they play these roles so perfect as parents that could be the bad guys of the story. And there's definitely something very sinister under the outside, the crust. Like once you get into the core, there's something hidden that's very sinister, and they play these characters so well to convey that in the beginning of the movie. You just know something's off, but you're not quite sure what. Like you can't put your finger on it, and they play those roles so well.
It's kind of fucked up to say, but they're almost too good for this movie. They outshine everybody else to me.
Well, there's not a whole lot of other characters in this movie, too. That's one of the things is, as far as sets and characters, there's not a lot of characters, but in specifically mentioning sets, a lot of this movie shot and takes place in one house, and the house is almost a character in its own right. Like it is a very old, kind of fallen apart, older house, and it has a lot of character. Like that is one thing I will give them big props on, was the house design. They shot this in a way cinematography-wise where they did extra tall walls and stuff because it was supposed to put you in that.
It's like a child's perspective. Yeah.
Who was the main character? It's this kid. And it kind of puts you in his perspective. And they do some really cool camera tricks and things with the house that really make me, at least, it gives me that feeling. I get that, creepy laying in bed and you hear something creepy in the house like that. Just takes me back to that. And there's just something I can't quite pinpoint about this movie that I really, really like.
So While analyzing this movie this week, I had a light bulb moment. I think it's safe to say this movie is not extremely popular with the masses, and I think I know why. Because while reading reviews and like discussion boards about this, the main complaint is that there are some parts of this that are a little too far from reality for most people. They say the parents are like too exaggerated, the house makes no sense, and the ending is way too unrealistic. But, and this is the fault of the filmmakers, I don't think people realize that this is, basically a horror fairy tale. And once you watch the movie through that lens, the movie makes a lot more sense. We see this in like the color of the home, the way like the walls are like, 30-foot tall, the rooms are massive. The parents are made to be like these obvious villains. And while doing my research, I came across some interviews where the director admitted that it is supposed to be like this scary fairy tale from the child's perspective. And I really think that if they would have just put like a little kid voiceover in the very beginning that says, "Once upon a time, there was a young boy named Peter," I think that would have completely changed a lot of people's outlook on this movie.
Yeah, I mean, maybe even they could have did like kind of how the Grinch does it, where it's like a book
Yeah,
that
yeah, or a
opens
book
up.
opening up.
From the very first time I watched this movie, I did pick up on that vibe watching it, but very early on, and I don't know if this was done on purpose, but our main character's Peter, and my first thought was Peter Pumpkin Eater.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
I
his
didn't
parents
didn't put that
literally
together.
they grow pumpkins in their backyard. And they're very fairy tale looking pumpkins, like, the long vines and with the color palette and the way the house is and things. It's very much a fairy tale type movie, and I don't know why, but with the name, I just put those two together. And like I said, I don't know if it was done on purpose, but it seems like if you're shooting a fairy tale horror movie, looking for the name of your main character, Peter Pumpkin Eater. His parents grow pumpkins.
Yeah, I started looking into this once I kind of got this light bulb moment. Like I started researching like child psychology with like bright colors and everything. And it just makes so much more sense when you look at it through this fairy tale lens. And I do think that one of the mistakes that the director made was not setting that tone immediately. Because when the movie first starts, it's kind of it's more of a based in reality movie until, about 20, 30 minutes in, you start kind of putting together like, okay, this is kind of more fairy tale. But the first time I seen it, I didn't come up with that. Like I didn't come away with it being like a fairy tale. But now, I do. And it's just very interesting. And I think that that was a big mistake that they had made.
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it a mistake. I think there's ways that they could have probably went about it better. It's definitely fairy tale like in that it's shot from the perspective of a child. The movie puts you in the shoes of your main character, which is this kid, and you very much don't know if some of this stuff that starts happening is his childlike imagination or not, which is very fairy tale like. I mean, even up towards the end, you even, at least I did, the first time I watched this, had the thought of, what if this kid does have an overactive imagination, and what happens in our climax? Like, what if there's nothing there?
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely has that fairy tale sense. And I know that they did this, like I said, with the camera tricks and stuff, to put you in the shoes of a child and what goes on in the imagination of a child. And I guess there is definitely ways that they could have conveyed it better, but I really enjoyed the movie, how it was done, how it came out.
So Before we dive into this, I just want to thank some of our UK listeners for getting back to us after last week's episode on Ghostwatch, which I did finally get my Ghostwatch t-shirt.
Hey, what? Didn't you find out it was here?
It was here the whole time.
It was here during recording.
It was
and
here.
You just didn't check the mail.
I did not see the email that said it had been delivered the day before. Yeah. So, yeah, anyway, one of the main people we want to thank is Hannah Johnson, who not only let us know that glory holes are a sexual thing over there, but also sharing some experiences her and her friends had with Ghostwatch. It was
thought you were gonna say
no, not with glory
glory
holes,
hole.
hopefully. It was really cool hearing from people that actually watched the film and experienced the aftermath in person in 1992. So huge thanks to them for sharing that. That's awesome. We've said many times before, but one of the best parts about doing the show is connecting with horror lovers all over the world and getting to hear like their stories and thoughts on the genre that we all love.
Yeah, I thought like the whole thing of it being a big deal because of the suicide that happened. I thought that was like really, really interesting to hear because that was such a small part of our notes at the at the end of the production notes at the end of the episode. And to hear that was such a big deal and that it was so talked about, even if you didn't watch it because of the aftermath and this kid taking his own life, that really stood out to me. So yeah, we appreciate it, Hannah, for getting back to us there. And also I did see that because of our episode being released a day late and us running behind, it was put out there that, we had an animal death in the family, and I did see some people reaching out with their condolences. So I do want to say I do appreciate the condolences.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's definitely cool that there's people willing to take their time out of their day to try to at least cheer you up or, give you condolences.
Yeah, just to know that, be reminded you're not alone, and people sharing, they're on similar the stories, and it's just it's a hard situation, and I do appreciate those who took the time to comment and let us know that we were in your thoughts.
Yeah, time is the most valuable thing in the world, and when people kind of give you some of their time, you should always be appreciative. Also, just a heads up, we are finally doing Scream next week. I am super excited. It's been years in the making. We've had so many emails and comments about this, and it is finally happening. So be on the lookout next week.
Yeah, it's been probably one of the most requested.
I think it's the most requested, definitely.
But also one of the ones that me and you have had personal conversations with, up there with like the original Halloween and the original Friday the 13th, that, we have waited for the right time, and it's finally come.
It's apparently the right time. And with that being said, let's dive into Cobweb.
Hello, boys and ghouls. If you want to stay up to date on what's going on with the show, talk about or submit your movie requests, or just say die, then I got good news for you. You can always find us at one of our social media accounts or our official website at Grindhouse.Horror.Pod.com, Facecrook at the Grindhouse Syndicate Horror Podcast, Instascam at grindhousesyndicate.horror.pod, and many gore, which you can always find links for in the show notes as always. And you know what I always say, the morgue, the merrier. So please subscribe or follow for alerts on new episodes. Now, back to the show, kiddies. Frights, camera, action.
And if you really love us and don't want us to get locked in a secret pit by our creepy, weird parents, give us a review. Cobweb is a 2023 American horror film directed by Samuel Bodin in his directorial debut. It was written by Chris Thomas Devlin and was included in the 2018 Blacklist. If you listen to our Autopsy of Jane Doe episode, you may remember us talking a bit about what the Blacklist actually is. The film stars Lizzie Kaplan, Woody Norman, Cleopatra Coleman, and Homelander himself, Anthony Starr. It was produced by Roy Lee, Andrew Childs, Evan Goldberg, Seth Rogen, James Weaver, and Josh Fagan. Production was funded by Lionsgate Films, Point Grey Pictures, and Vertigo Entertainment. I had no fucking clue that Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen produced this movie.
Yeah, that threw me for a loop. Not only did I not know that, hearing about it after the fact, it just does not seem like a movie that they would be involved with in any way.
Well, it does make a little sense because they also produce The Boys, so it's how they got Anthony Starr to climb aboard.
But that definitely is way more like, up their alley.
Yeah.
But it does make sense as far as the Anthony Starr part of it, who is incredible. I only know him, or prior to this, as Homelander. And when I first seen him in this movie, it was really hard to, separate Homelander, when I first seen him on screen. And it's just a testament to how good of an actor he is, because within a minute or two, that was completely lost. He does such a good job playing this part that I didn't even think about Homelander throughout the rest. I thought it was going to be a problem when I first seen him. How am I ever going to take him serious as this dad character? But he did such an amazing job playing this part.
Yeah, he is, my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah.
He will literally give me chills through the screen.
Yeah, the actress who played the mom too,
Lizzie Kaplan.
Yep. A huge credit to her. Both of them are just so creepy.
Yeah.
They do creepy so well.
So it had a budget of $13 million and a box office of only $8.5 million, officially making it a certified box office bomb, which is not surprising considering Lionsgate did absolutely nothing to promote this film, which is crazy because the two main producers are Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, who drop hit after hit normally. It also, for some unknown stupid reason, wasn't released in the fall like it should have been. It was instead released in July against fucking Oppenheimer and the goddamn Barbie movie.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
They were the
I don't know
juggernaut.
what Oppenheimer is.
Oh, really? Yeah, it was literally the top making movie of
Is it
that
a
year.
Superhero movie?
No, it's the story of how they created the atomic bomb.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've not seen it, but I've heard of the movie.
Yeah,
Yes.
amazing movie.
Yeah, I definitely haven't seen that, but I do remember when Barbie came out, and that was the opposite. The marketing for that was incredible. That's a movie that I never seen.
But you felt like you seen it?
Never will see. But the marketing was so good for that movie that I felt like that's literally everywhere you turned. It was a commercial, or the main chick who plays in that is doing a cameo and something else to promote it. And yeah, so not only the fact that you dropped it in July was this movie cannot be released anytime outside of September 1st to October 31st. It has to be in that 2-month window. So the fact that they released it in July was incredibly stupid. And then you released it at the same time as probably the best marketed movie of the year and put no marketing behind it.
Not to mention, also, the same time a fucking Christopher Nolan movie comes out.
Yeah.
That dude is an amazing fucking director. He did Oppenheimer, and, that was just stupid. So the story follows a young boy raised by overprotective parents who suddenly starts to hear noises coming from behind his bedroom wall. Production began on September of 2020, where it was filmed at New Bodin Film Studios in Sofia, Bulgaria. The production team built a large enclosed set for the interiors and exteriors of the house to create a specific atmosphere for the film. Instead of using a real house, the filmmakers constructed a fully realized set from scratch. This included creating the front and back exteriors of the house, as well as multiple interior sets, such as the bedrooms, the school bus, and even the school itself. Isn't that crazy to think of? That whole entire movie is shot on a soundstage. There's
Yeah.
literally a couple scenes where they're like out in the road in the neighborhood. That was all built for the movie inside.
Yeah, that's crazy that they built the house up, which, like I said, the house in itself is a character alone in the movie. They did an amazing job building the exterior of the house. I totally thought that the exterior shots were a real house.
So did
Because
I.
there's also houses next door that they had to build the fronts for. It totally fits in and feels like a legitimate, like, older neighborhood. But the fact that the school was done on a sound stage is kind of mind-blowing to me, because when they were doing the school shots, whenever I was in middle school, they shot a Kevin Costner movie, The New Daughter, and they used my school as for the school scenes in that movie. And it was a big deal, they were there filming for like a week, and they closed off that part of the school, and they were shooting while we were actually in school during the day. So you could look out the window sometimes and see them shooting. But regardless, when I seen the school scenes in this movie, that was what I thought of. Like, there was certain shots that made me think of whenever that movie was shot at my school. So the fact that they did all of that on a soundstage, and they literally built that school, and they didn't build the whole school, but what you see in the movie for those shots is really impressive.
Yeah. In order to capture a certain atmosphere, the set was designed to give the film a claustrophobic and homey feel, with details like salvage elements from the studio's history as an old Soviet-era studio, which, in my opinion, is most notable in the colors and design inside the house. It is very bland, old, faded, and beginning to fall apart.
Well, that goes hand in hand with the very gloomy, almost black and white color palette to this.
It
is a very saturation washed movie.
It does very much give off like Soviet era, Soviet Union, because everything there at the time was kind of falling apart and, gloomy, and these very mute colors were used.
Yeah, no saturation. They wash the saturation completely. Like, when you look at old video or pictures of old Soviet Union, it is very, like, Russia itself has this very gloomy feel to it, especially outside of like Moscow and St. Petersburg. And that's a lot of the feel that you get.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad I came across that, because that makes kind of more sense now. According to director Samuel Bodin, he was drawn to Devlin's script because it was simple and twisted, walking the line between reality and a fairy tale, which allowed him to create a tone that was more creepy and gritty rather than just gory, causing the film to rely on atmosphere, pacing, buildups, and unsettling moments rather than jump scares or extreme violence. He also spoke on how important the October fall setting is for the film, claiming that despite his home country of France not really celebrating Halloween as a major holiday, he was still inspired by the mood through films and literature, specifically mentioning the main influence, John Carpenter's Halloween. Other influences mentioned are Coraline, Tim Burton films, The Shining, and the Brothers Grimm fairy tales. which all include distortion of reality, childhood perspective, and things appearing off kilter. All right, so the monster, aka Sarah, is played by actress Alexandra Jurvagova, who is super hot, by the way. I don't know if you've seen the behind the scenes stuff. Very attractive lady.
The only featurette that I did not watch was Becoming the Girl, as they put it in the featurette. I didn't know she had a name.
Yeah, very, very attractive woman. So she uses a full prosthetic costume that includes a mask, an outfit, a 4-meter-long wig, and blue contact lenses. Small realistic house spiders were also used on set despite director Bodin's arachnophobia. It was released July 21st of 2023 to a limited theatrical release where it received mostly mixed reviews from critics. Valerie Complex of Deadline Hollywood wrote, quote, "The movie's strength lie in the established atmosphere of intrigue and suspense. However, it can't sustain that as it grapples with missed opportunities and a lackluster conclusion that fails to bring closure to its narrative." Variety's Dennis Harvey criticized the script and characters, but added, quote, "Still, director Samuel Bodin's first theatrical feature is atmospheric and departs from stock slasher conventions just enough to make for an entertaining, if unexceptional, scarefest." Despite any negative opinions, one thing that has constantly been praised is the atmosphere and Philip Lozano's fantastic and creepy cinematography, who has worked on many different projects for TV and film, including The Sopranos to The Nun 2. Fun fact, he is also the cinematographer for the up-and-coming Evil Dead Burn.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that the atmosphere and the cinematography is well praised.
Yes.
Like I'm not the only one who noticed that, and I know that was a big thing you noticed and really liked about this movie too. And we're not the only ones that give it praise for that. Even the people who dislike this movie recognize that it is a beautiful movie.
Absolutely. After about 3 weeks in theaters, the film was re-released on streaming services on August 11th, along with a DVD and Blu-ray version on September 12th. So, hit theaters in July, went out of theaters in August. In September, it went to physical media. So, it did not have a very long run, which kind of backs up Lionsgate not really giving a shit about this movie. And if you think back a couple minutes ago, I said that production started in 2020. This didn't come out till 2023, which means they sat on this movie for some time before releasing it. All right, so ratings. Rotten Tom gave it a 59%. IMDb gave it a 5.9 out of 10. Letterboxd gave it a 2.7 out of 5. And the Google average audience gave it a 3.2 out of 5. If you would like to watch this movie, you can currently find it streaming on Netflix or for rent on Amazon, Google Play, Fandango, and Apple TV for $3.99.
Man, that Rotten Tomatoes score surprises me, man. I thought that this movie would have gotten like one of those ridiculous high, like a 90% or something, because this movie is such a atmospheric, cinematography heavy movie. Like, and it has that independent feel to it. Like, I honestly, when you mentioned its theatrical run and when it came out, I don't remember it coming out in theaters. I don't even know if it hit theaters around here.
No, so it didn't, and that is because Lionsgate literally did not promote at all, gave it no promotional budget, and they only put it in like 700 theaters.
Yeah, so that doesn't surprise me at all, because like I said, I don't remember this even coming through theaters. I would have thought that this would have been like a straight-to-streaming movie. It has a very independent feel to it.
Yeah, I didn't see it until it hit streaming, and it was because we were doing the show, and we needed to put together our, top 10 of the year, so I had to watch it, and yeah, I watched it, and that's when I actually went and told you, like, hey, you need to watch this.
This one actually landed in my top 10, too. It may have been like my 9th or 10th, but it was towards the back of the list, but it did crack my top 10.
All right, so you ready to dive into the plot of Cobweb?
I am ready.
All right, so we start off by meeting our main character, an 8-year-old boy named Peter. And as the credits roll, we get a couple of quick shots of Peter's day, which shows us some important information about him. So it immediately becomes apparent that he is very shy, introverted, bullied, and friendless at school. He lives with his mom and dad in a large but rundown home and has no siblings. And with this, we pretty much can tell Peter doesn't have a nice life and definitely doesn't seem very happy, which very much breaks my heart for him. This sucks. As you know, like we moved around a lot as kids. I went to a ton of different schools, and I was like Peter in many ways. And I do not wish that on any kid.
Yeah, they also, very apparent early on, they leave it like your reasoning for why he's so introverted and, just kind of a down kid is kind of left in the dark. And that goes hand in hand with the script and a lot of this movie, you're kind of trying to figure the parents out and you don't know if he's being abused or not. And that's, like I said, it's very apparent that that's left open-ended at the beginning of this movie.
So before we go any further, I want to talk about Peter's house real quick. So on the outside, it's this unkept, small 2-story white house in an average neighborhood. But on the inside, it is very big with these huge, 12-foot ceilings. It's decorated with these mute colors and old, yellowish wallpaper. Kind of gives off haunted house vibes.
It does. It's very much a haunted house. When you think of haunted house, this comes to your head. It's not like Victorian style haunted house, but
more
your
90s
average
haunted house or something.
Yeah, a house that would have been really old in the 90s, like that you would just see in a really average neighborhood, like maybe built in the early 1900s, like maybe 1930 or 40, and it's not well kept. And it just has that kind of creepy vibe. And like I said, this house has a lot of character. It's almost a character in itself.
So we then find ourselves in Peter's room at 1:45 a.m. when suddenly he is woken up by some thumps and bumps that seem to be coming from behind the wall. Once he realizes what is going on, he lays there perfectly still and completely silent until he hears the sound again, but this time much louder, putting him on alert as he flings the covers off and turns on his light. Now in a panic, Peter runs over to his window to look into the backyard, where all he sees is an old wooden swing hanging from a tree, a rundown shed, and his father's personal pumpkin patch, which I think the pumpkins is such an awesome addition to the setting. It feels like super fall. It gets you in the mood for Halloween, and I absolutely love the shot of the moonlight gleaming off the pumpkins.
Yeah, this is a beautiful shot.
So after a few minutes, Peter finally gets the nerve to approach the wall and put his ear up to it to try and see if he can hear anything else that may explain what is going on here. But at first, he doesn't hear anything except for the cool air being pushed through the passageways of the home, until he knocks on it 3 times and listens as closely as he can, when suddenly he hears 3 more knocks repeat from the other side, which scares the shit out of him, sending him running to the other side of the room. We then jump to a cautious Peter heading into his mom and dad's room, where he wakes them up and explains what he has just heard. His mother Carol then walks him back, puts her ear to the wall, and then reassures him that there's nothing there and the house is just old. The next morning, we see Peter head off to school, where while getting on the bus, he is tripped by another boy named Shitstain. Brian.
Oh, I thought his name was Shitstain.
Should be. And as Peter goes to get up off the floor, Brian tells him there will be more at recess. You probably remember, but I had this exact problem on the bus around the same age. until Dad gave me the old, quote, how to stop a bully speech. And
You punch him in the fucking mouth.
I had to fight this kid.
Oh.
Yep. And the bus driver got mad, and the bully started crying and being a little bitch, and I just sat there in my newly won seat.
Yeah, as many bullies are. Their bullying is more of a defensive mechanism.
He's a paper man.
Yes, paper boy.
So once they arrive at school, we see the vice principal walk in and introduce the substitute teacher, Mrs. Devine, who is filling in for a few weeks while the other teacher is out. Now, Miss Devine is young, hot, and from this point on, one of our main characters. And I really like how they dressed her in orange and black for Halloween. I don't know if you caught, she mentions like Halloween's her favorite holiday. And in case I didn't mention it yet, this takes place a week before Halloween. So as Miss Devine decorates the classroom with cutouts of pumpkins and bats, she is suddenly startled by Peter, who is still quietly sitting at his desk while everyone else is outside playing. And after sparking up a conversation with him, she immediately clocks that this kid is having a hard time, prompting her to invite him to help her decorate, which seems to cheer him up a little until he is startled by a spider that crawls across his desk, which in turn gives us this nice bonding scene where she shows him how to safely catch and release it out of the window.
Yeah, so the whole spider scene, I the first time I watched this movie didn't think much of it, and then it hit me at the end of this watch. This is some brilliant foreshadowing. This whole scene is extremely well placed. If you
Mirrors the end.
Yeah, it's perfect foreshadowing for what's to come. You have this very dangerous creature that is caught and set free. And, when you're looking at it through the glass, it doesn't seem as harmful as it is, obviously, when it's set free. And yeah, I just thought it was a really, really well-placed scene that you don't think anything of until the end when you look back on this moment.
Yeah, I agree. So after that, we then jump to later that evening where we see Peter eating dinner with his mom Carol and his father Mark. And while asking his parents about Halloween, we find out something truly horrific. Peter has never been allowed to go trick-or-treating.
And that's why he's so depressed.
Somebody call CPS on these obviously abusive parents. This should be a fucking crime.
Yeah, I think it's abuse to make your kid trunk or treat and not let them go trick or treating. Now, if that is abuse, what is not letting your kid even dress up or celebrate at all?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and put it out there as Grindhouse Syndicate's official position. Trunk or treat should be illegal.
Yes.
Yes, we support that message.
And not allowing your kid to celebrate Halloween should also be illegal, even if you are Jehovah's Witnessed.
I never did find out what Jehovah witnessed.
Sure. He witnessed nobody celebrating holidays.
Didn't witness no trick-or-treating, that's for sure. So what makes this even worse is they have never given him a reason why. But as Mark notices how bummed out this makes his son, he decides to tell him about the event on Halloween that changed their lives forever. So years ago, before Peter was born, there was a little girl that lived at the end of their street who suddenly vanished while trick-or-treating and has still to this day never been found or heard from. Carol then interrupts, telling him it was very traumatic for everyone in the neighborhood, and that is why they don't talk about or celebrate All Hallows Eve. After dinner, we then jump to 11:30, where we see him falling asleep in his bed while staring at the wall from the night before. And right as his eyes close, he is suddenly woken up by a soft young voice who says his name in a whisper. This causes him to leap out of bed while screaming for his parents, where we see Mark quickly swing the door open and ask Peter what's wrong. But as he tells his dad about the noises from the wall again, we see that Mark instantly doesn't take this seriously. Despite this, Mark, like Carol the night before, then examines the wall, but again doesn't hear or see anything, which causes him to turn around and tell his son that it's just rats and they will take care of it tomorrow. That is not that much more comforting. There are rats on the other side of your wall.
Well, to a kid who's scared of ghosts, like, yeah, you'd rather it be like rats than paranormal entity.
I don't know, man. I might take the ghost over the rats.
That's one good thing one thing this movie does really good is giving you that feeling that a kid experiences when, of something paranormal happens. They do a really good job at putting you in the shoes and through the eyes of a child. I, as a kid, would have preferred it be rats. Now, as an adult, I'd rather it be ghost than have a fucking rat in my house. But we do know about your fear of rats.
Oh,
I know that
God.
Came up.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
I didn't either.
It came up in an episode. God, what were we covering?
We were covering a couple movies. I remember we talked
kept
about
coming up.
Like Nosferatu had all those rats, and then there was like another movie. Creep Show. No, that was the bugs. It was something else, man, that was just like tons of rats, and it just grossed me out.
We covered something that was really rat heavy, and it really, really bothered you. Oh, 1922.
Oh,
with
yeah.
the fucking rats.
Yeah.
Those scenes with the rats too are super unsettling. Like,
yeah,
the rats
disturbing.
like torment him for the rest of his life. Yeah, and then it kept coming up in small ways. It was like 3 or 4 episodes in a row there was rats.
Yeah, just can't escape it.
When I learned about your
rat phobia.
Yeah. Is that what it's called?
Ratnophobia.
Ratnophobia.
I don't know.
Are you ratsist?
Maybe. So we then instantly cut to the next day where we see Mark and Peter head out to the shed grabbing some rat poison, where Peter remarks that it smells like cinnamon, which will definitely come back later. He then asks if the rats will die after they eat the poison pellets, but gets a little sad when Mark responds that, yeah, they will, prompting his dad to stop what he is doing, look Peter in the eye, and say, sometimes you have to make tough decisions to protect your family, which definitely paints a darker picture if you realize that he isn't necessarily talking about the rats.
Yeah, looking back on this scene, the way they do this scene, even on your first time watch, you have a good feeling that there's a deeper meaning behind this line, just the way it was shot. But yeah, it does end up having kind of I don't know if you would call it foreshadowing, but definitely has some meaning.
Well, it's one of those lines that is going to add to your theory later on of what the parents did.
Yeah,
that's what it's doing. It's fueling a false narrative, because they try to steer you in this direction when the story actually goes in a different direction. So they're kind of using it to help get you to that, that fake out.
Well, and it's one of those things where once you get the full story and you finish the end of the movie, you look back on this and they shoot it as a very kind of very creepy, like kind of like something off in this scene. And then this is kind of the tension breaker, like where he sits down and he tells his son, like, this is up until this point, the dad is really creepy. You can't tell if he's abusive or, like there's the scene where they go out to the shed to get the rat poison and they shoot this scene and they shoot it low and up, and his dad makes a comment, something about going and killing some rats or something. And it's very just creepy. And this is kind of the tension breaker. And it makes a lot more sense of why they shot it that way once you get the full story. Also, the little girl going missing, that is another thing that on my first time watch, they kind of steer you in a certain direction. Like it was one of my theories, but you know that that's going to come back to be important in the story one way or another.
So the next day at school, while Mrs. Devine is reading a spooky story to the kids, she notices that Peter is coloring a pretty disturbing picture at his desk. And as the camera zooms from above, we see it is a kid laying in bed with a scared look on his face, staring at a pitch black wall with the words "Help me" written above. Believing that there is something seriously wrong with Peter's home life, she then heads to his house with the picture in hand, looking to speak to his parents. But unfortunately, only Carol is home and immediately thinks it's odd that a substitute teacher is coming to the house to check on her son. Miss Devine then hands Carol the picture, where she is very surprised and left with no immediate explanation. But after taking a second to think, she then informs Miss Devine that Peter has an overactive imagination, which has been causing him to wake them up at night scared. You can tell that this sudden interest in Peter and his home life doesn't sit well with her, where she pretty much blows this off and shuts the door in the concerned woman's face, leaving her standing there stunned. Now that she is good and pissed off, Carol quickly heads upstairs to ask Peter what the hell he is doing, drawing pictures and asking other people for help. And this is where he tells his mother that he's not asking for help, she is, which confuses Carol, but not enough for her to ask him any more questions, as she then storms out of the room, slamming the door. And what this tells us is that Peter is now talking to this voice who is trapped on the other side of the wall. We then cut to 12:51 a.m., where he is once again awakened by the thumping, but now we are starting to hear that it's more of a knock rather than clumsy movement like before, reinforcing this idea that they are now communicating every night. We then hear the voice say, "Wake up, Peter, don't be scared," and this is where it is revealed that this is the voice of a little girl similar to Peter's age, making us all wonder just what the hell another child is doing behind their wall. When I first saw this movie, besides the fact that I assumed, I automatically assumed like the missing girl that the dad was talking about is in this wall. But the other thing that I kind of got was this, gave me a little bit of People Under the Stairs vibes.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like the girl missing, that was definitely high up on my theory list.
Oh, yeah.
But I also, with this being years back, thought that there was a paranormal side to this. Like this girl he was talking about, at this point in the story, we don't know if this is an actual person or something paranormal, almost like a black phone. Like how the kids talk. Yeah.
So Peter immediately sits up in bed, telling the little girl to stop talking to him, and he knows that she is part of his imagination. But she responds with the fact that this might be true, but she knows that he could really use a friend right now, and so can she. Peter doesn't respond at first, causing the little girl to turn and leave, when suddenly he remembers, damn, she's right, I don't have a single fucking friend. Where he then calls out to her, telling her to please come back. And just like that, the seed for a doomed friendship has sprouted, which will change Peter's life forever. So the next day at school, we see Peter painting the face of a pumpkin, where it seems that he is in a little more of a cheerful mood than normal. I'm assuming it's because of this new friendship.
That's a good point. The new friendship, I didn't think about that. I attributed it to Peter clearly really likes Halloween. He's not allowed to partake in the dressing up and stuff. So on the few times that he does get to do Halloween stuff at school, it's clearly something that he really enjoys. Like he doesn't get to do any Halloween stuff at home because of this little girl going missing. So this is their way of showing you that he's really happy when he gets to partake at school. His newfound friendship may have been more so the direction they were going in.
So he's painting this pumpkin, but unfortunately, shithead Brian also notices this change in Peter's attitude and decides to take him back down a few notches. He then catches Peter walking across the playground carrying his pumpkin when suddenly Brian runs up from behind, pushes Peter to the ground, and proceeds to stomp his art project into orange goo. God, I wish I could spit in this kid's Capri Sun. Like, he is such a little fucker.
Yeah. Fuck this kid. He is a bastard. You can just tell, like, as soon as he sees an ounce of happiness in Peter, he's like, I've got to destroy that. And I do wonder, too, if the face Peter was painting on this pumpkin, now that you pointed out, like, him being happy with his newfound friendship, if he was painting her face on the pumpkin. Like,
oh, yeah, maybe.
Like
I don't know.
what he imagines her to look like.
By the way, I don't think I mentioned it before, but this is Gary Busey's kid. Which, when you know that...
Which one?
The, Brian.
The little fucking shithead?
Yeah, but like, you know, once I found that out and I watched it for the second time to write out the plot, I'm like, damn, he fucking looks like Gary Busey 100%. Definitely his, child. So later that night, while Peter lays in bed feeling sad for himself, the little girl behind the wall begins calling for him. But after a few minutes of silence, she realizes there is something wrong when he then tells her about Brian constantly fucking with him. She then starts boosting his confidence, telling him that she believes in him and thinks that he is strong enough to stand up to the bully, aka beat this kid's fucking ass. Now, in this next scene, it's not really clear if Peter went and like told what happened the day before or not, but while sitting at his desk at school, he is shocked to see Brian and his mother walk into the classroom holding a replacement pumpkin. Brian is then forced to walk over to Peter, give him the pumpkin, and apologize in front of the whole class, who immediately starts laughing, which of course is going to make Brian's retaliation way worse than before. This is one of those situations where it's like the adults forgot what it's like to be a kid and deal with like other shitty kids all day. Because for one, making his mom come in and doing all this shit in front of everyone is 100% going to make it worse. Two, why the fuck would Peter even want a pumpkin drawn by this fuckface kid? Like, yeah, I want to take home art drawn by the kid who tortures me every day, especially considering how shitty his was compared to the one Peter made.
Yeah.
This is a stupid-ass idea.
Yeah, that was my thought. Like, Peter put in all this time and effort and was really proud of the pumpkin that he did. Why would he want to take home a really shitty done pumpkin that this other kid that clearly sucks at drawing faces on pumpkins made?
Yeah, I wish Peter would have took it out to the playground and was like, hey, Brian. And Brian turns and looks and Peter like pisses all over his pumpkin.
I wish
fuck
you
your
just
stupid shitty drawing.
Smashed it. If anything, give him like a fresh pumpkin to do
his own
art on again.
So after this, the bell rings and all the kids take off running, with Peter quickly trying to put away his things in order to duck out before Brian catches him. Well, that is at least what it seems like at first. And the whole time this is happening, we hear the girl in the wall's voiceover replay in Peter's head where she is basically like, you gotta seriously fuck this kid up if you want him to stop. We then cut to Brian walking with his friend down the hallway, and right as he turns a corner, we notice Peter quietly following behind him. That's the thing about fucking with the quiet guy. You spend so much time not paying him any attention, you don't even notice when he's like sneaking up on you. That's why you don't fuck with that quiet kid, man. So once Brian then turns the corner heading towards the exit of the school, we see Peter follow him, where we then hear Brian yell his name, a bit of a commotion, and then the sweet, sweet sound of revenge as Brian starts screaming in pain. The camera then cuts behind Peter, showing him standing at the top of the stairs stunned while looking down at Brian and his very broken leg. I think it's safe to say the Grindhouse Syndicate supports this message.
Yeah.
For me personally, as long as it's justifiable, child on child violence is acceptable.
Yeah, especially when there's a bully involved. Like, I don't think Peter, well, you can tell by Peter's reaction, he didn't mean to push this kid down the stairs and cause him to get a leg snapped in half. But
You meant to hurt him.
yeah, go Peter. Like, fuck this kid. I don't care if he snapped both his legs and his arms. This kid's a bastard.
Yeah.
I hate this kid so much. I hate the actor that played this kid.
If you like to torment and beat up other little kids, then you earn that broken leg all by yourself.
Yep.
So next, we cut to a very worried-looking Peter sitting at the dinner table while a disappointed Carol stands off to the side, and frustrated and angry Mark asks him what the fuck he was thinking. But this is immediately interrupted by Carol finally informing Mark of the creepy picture Peter drew in Mrs. Devine's class. A now very angry Mark then asks Peter why he would do something like that, and he responds, because he really heard the girl in the wall, which only angers Mark even more. He then yells that Peter is grounded when Carol interjects telling Peter to go to his room, but Mark yells back, no, he is going in the basement, which instantly puts Peter and Carol in a panic. Mark then slides the fridge out of the way, revealing a small hidden green door with a padlock on it that leads down to the dark, cold basement. So, a couple things here. So, one of the best additions to this movie is Anthony Starr, who is so good at being scary in this scene. It kind of personally takes me back to being like yelled at as a kid. That's how good he does this. Anthony Starr does such a good job playing this like character that you almost feel like you got to walk on eggshells around him, because like one wrong move, even by like us, the audience members, could like set this guy off. Like, he just gives off that vibe, man.
Yeah. Without going into too much details, me and you grew up in a situation with a parental figure that we lived with that very much reminds me of Anthony Starr's reaction in this.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah, good point.
to the point of even the mom trying to kind of cover it up because she knew how angry and how, over the top the dad was going to be over this drawing situation. So I think that's why you probably had the same reaction as I did, where this felt very authentic and very real. Also, the way the mom reacts over the drawing is extremely over the top, very weird. And now with the way that the dad's acting, we can definitely tell that there's something under the surface with this family that you can't quite pinpoint at this point in the movie, but there's some really weird creepiness with the parents. Like, the parents, they do such a good job in this movie of hiding whether the parents are the good guys or the bad guys, if they're just normal but slightly weird. But you get the really strong sense that there's something sinister beneath the surface. And we have that little girl going missing too.
Yeah, they're being painted as the villains for sure.
Yeah, and up until this point in the movie, there's not been anything like any sort of abuse or anything that we've seen. We've just seen some really weird reactions by the parents. And then that's about to get blown open here with the scene of how he reacts, like what the punishment is. But yeah, just kind of drawing some of the picture of the dynamics of what's going on here. And it's a very slow burn in the beginning of this movie. But what makes it so interesting to me is just the kind of trying to figure out what lies beneath the surface.
So the other thing that I wanted to mention was I really love the cinematography paired with the set design here, because when Carol first opens the basement door, we get a shot from inside the basement and we see her ducking through this small doorway, but behind her, we can see like the oven and like the cooking vent, which is paired with the super high ceilings. It looks like it never ends. Like it's just done so obviously to give us this childlike perspective of things being like sized weird and things being abnormally tall. And this is just a really good example of them doing that.
Yeah, you definitely, like, when you think back at being a kid, everything was so much bigger, and we have used the comparison because you don't really notice it as a kid, and, you obviously grow very slow, so it's not something you notice until you really look back on it, but the comparison that we use is we used to play wrestle on our mom's bed, and we think back, and we used to use that as a whole wrestling ring. Like, it was the size of a wrestling ring to us. And now thinking back at that, that's fucking hilarious. That's laughable. This movie does a really good job at putting you in that perspective of things being so much bigger and never ending. And I think that's a great example with the cinematography that you just pointed out.
So both parents then take Peter down into this old dark basement that has only one light and a ton of spider webs everywhere, hence the name Cobweb. And when Peter takes a seat on the cold hard cement floor, we see behind him is a large wooden pallet with heavy sandbags placed on the corners to hold it down, which doesn't really seem important but will come back later. What would have really fucked me up the most as a kid in this situation right here is when they close the door, we then hear Mark slide the fucking refrigerator back in front of it. So now you're like trapped down here. And nobody but the two people who put you down here even knows how to get to you. This is like a hidden door.
Yeah. And as an adult, like, I may not have thought about this as a kid, but as an adult, like, I think, what if something was to happen to them? Nobody would ever know I was down here.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, this is a very sinister part in the movie. This is the first, like, them really painting the parents as the bad guys here. Like, okay, their punishment to their kid is putting them in this pitch black basement behind a hidden door that is hidden by a refrigerator. Like, there is something really, really dark and sinister going on with the way these parents handle their kid. If you're gonna ground your kid, you don't put them in a fucking pitch black basement behind a hidden door. Like, that really starts to paint a bad picture.
So the next day, we see Peter is still down in the basement sleeping on the floor when we suddenly cut to the school where we see Miss Devine getting chewed out for going to a student's house and speaking with the parents. The vice principal then calms down a bit and tells her that she can't get personally invested in every child that seems upset unless there are clear signs of abuse showing. She's just got to let it go and move on. She then asks him if he has ever met Peter's mother in person because she definitely seems a little off. And this is where the vice principal explains that when the little girl went missing on Halloween years ago, it really took a toll on the parents of that neighborhood, and he doesn't really blame them for being so overprotective. And the whole time this conversation is going on, we keep cutting back to Peter, who has now woken up in the basement, noticed a long heavy chain, which he then discovers is attached to a locked metal door in the floor, connected to a caged window, revealing a very deep concrete hole. And as Peter stands over the hole, all he sees is the silhouette of a teddy bear laying at the bottom. And this is, of course, what that pallet and sandbags was concealing. So it becomes very obvious that Peter's parents are trying at least to keep something like locked up. After this revelation, we then cut back to Miss Devine at the school, who is now using her phone to look up the missing girl in Peter's neighborhood. And if you have been listening to the show for a while now, you know that I love to read the little hard-to-see news articles and movies and then tell you guys what I learned. So what it says is, Authorities are asking the public for help finding 11-year-old Rebecca Holbrook. An Amber Alert was issued at 2:15 a.m. Saturday when the girl went missing while trick-or-treating with friends on Halloween. She was reportedly wearing a Princess Leia costume. If you have any information on Rebecca's whereabouts, please call 911 immediately. Also, did you catch that the town is named Haddonfield Township?
It's not Haddonfield, it's Holdenfield.
Holdenfield? Oh, I wrote that wrong.
But I think that it was a ode to Haddonfield.
Yeah, because I listed off in the production that he mentioned his main inspiration is John Carpenter's Halloween.
Yeah, so Holdenfield is I didn't notice it in the article because I didn't pause it to read the article, but I noticed it in the name of the school, Holdenfield Elementary School. So I assumed that Haddonfield may have been part of the inspiration there.
So after reading the article and getting a serious chill down her spine, she decides to grade some papers, but when she comes to Peter's, she just can't let the feeling go that he needs help, where she then devises the plan to write her cell phone number on the test, drive over to his house, and personally give it to him, because we find out that Peter was expelled for the rest of the year after snapping fuckface Brian's leg, so he obviously won't be coming back to school to get his tests. So she then heads over there, and needless to say, Carol isn't too pleased to see her again, especially when she starts asking to see Peter, who is definitely still in the basement. But right as Carol goes to shut the door in her face, Mark walks up and introduces himself, which sparks up a conversation where he pretty quickly invites her inside. So while walking towards the kitchen, we see that Miss Devine is very uncomfortable, especially considering Mark is holding a hammer with blood on his arm and Carol locks the door with the key behind her. The hammer wouldn't really bother me all that much, but the locking the door behind me would definitely raise some red flags to me.
Yeah, I don't think that she should have went in the house at all. I do think going to a child's house outside of school is very inappropriate. If I was the mom, I would be very aggravated by this as well. But yeah, if you think that some type of abuse is going on, why would you go in their house?
Yeah, you need to just alert the authorities. Don't try to go over there and be a detective. So once seated at the table, Miss Devine asks where Peter is going to school next, and Mark joyfully responds that he will be homeschooled right here in this house. They can instantly tell that she doesn't think this is a great idea, which fills the room with unseen tension between the three. Once she realizes this conversation is heading off the rails fast, she quickly changes the subject, asking where Peter is. They of course lie and tell her that he is in his room and she is not allowed to see him. I will agree with the parents here. She was only his substitute for maybe a week. It's definitely odd that she's so interested in his home life. So this of course sparks an argument between Carol and Miss Devine, which catches Peter's attention down in the basement. He then starts banging on the door while screaming for help, but unfortunately because of the noisy washer, she isn't quite sure what she is hearing or where it's coming from. After calming Carol down some, Mark tells Miss Devine that she needs to leave, and needless to say, she doesn't hesitate, as we see her quickly jump up and head for the door, but right before she makes it, the washer stops for a moment, causing her to realize this noise that she has been hearing is most likely Peter trapped. But right as she turns around, she is confronted by Mark, who is once again holding the hammer, blocking her way back into the kitchen. She then confidently asks him what the sound is, where he very coldly responds, "The washing machine." And right as he says this, the washer kicks back on, dashing Peter's hopes of getting any help from his former teacher. She then leaves and gets into her car where she damn near has a panic attack, which, honestly, I don't blame her. That is a really sketchy situation to be in, and both the parents are a little unhinged and scary. Also want to point out, we get a quick scene after this of Mark washing that cut on his arm. And we can see that it definitely was not a nail that did that. It's like a fucking 5-inch long cut down his arm, kind of like a slash. So yeah, not a nail, not home improvement. I think he might be
emo
working with whatever he's got locked up down there.
or emo.
Or that. So later that night, we see Carol bake some pumpkin cupcakes in order to celebrate Peter's release, which I thought was super creepy. Like how she like walked down holding this pan with only like the lights from the candles lighting her face. And she's got this like overly happy smile on her face. It just gives me the creeps, man. Like it just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, the chick that plays the mom is incredible.
Very good in Castle Rock.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that's where I knew her from. She
Kathy
played
Bates' character,
yes.
To a T, too.
Yeah, incredible. She does incredible playing that character in Castle Rock. Like,
yeah, Annie.
If you watch the Kathy Bates portrayal of that character,
Misery,
and then you watch Castle Rock, it is like insane. The mannerisms and the way she talks and the way she says like certain words, the way she walks. This woman is an incredible actress. I didn't even put those two together, that's where I knew her from. And that's the two roles that I know of her playing in. She's been incredible in both of them.
Yeah.
And both of them are slightly off female character.
Yeah.
She does really good at playing slightly off, unhinged characters.
Yeah, she's playing Annie Wilkes from Misery.
Yeah. And with that character, too, it's a very similar thing that she seems normal, but you can tell something's off.
Yeah.
And as we dive into the story, we learn more and more unhinged this person is. But yeah, she does a great job with both of those.
So once he is freed, his mom gives him a bath, which he's way too old for.
Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah.
Why is she giving him a sponge bath?
I don't know.
Like, this kid's gotta be like
he's
10 years old.
He's 8 years old.
8 years old. Like, why aren't you actively not just giving him a sponge bath? Like, you were washing him like a baby.
Yeah. But while she is washing his back, Mark comes in and tells him that he will be homeschooled by his mother from now on, and they forgive him for getting in trouble at school. We can tell Peter is not a fan of this idea, but goes along with it, then telling his father that he knows he needs to grow up and stop believing in things that aren't there. I want to point out something that I have never noticed before. When his mom is washing his back, we can actually see a big-ass scar on her arm, very similar to the one Mark just recently got. Yeah. So after all that, things seem to have calmed down a lot, where we then see Carol and Mark put a much more cheerful Peter to bed. But as soon as they close the door, Peter drops the act, running over to the wall and signaling the little girl that he is back. When she responds, she immediately asks him where the fuck he has been, where he quickly tells her about being locked in the basement. She then informs him that he has to be careful around his parents because they are not what they seem, which, after thinking about it, is true, just not in the way most people probably think, because she says they are not what they seem, and right now, they seem like fucking creepy-ass weirdos that might be capable of murder or kidnapping little girls down the street, but in reality, they're actually trying to protect Peter. He just doesn't realize it yet. It's kind of like a double meaning kind of thing.
Well, yeah, at this point in the movie, like the first time I seen it, you know, you think as much as we cover these movies, we're normally pretty good at putting our finger on things pretty early. And it seemed like a false flag, as obvious as they were trying to paint the parents as being bad, especially when they showed the room, like them putting him in the basement for days in the dark. That is a a not normal situation. That's not a normal punishment. The fact that the door is hidden tells you that this basement hidden room is for more than just his punishment. Like they didn't make this whole hidden door just for when he's grounded. That would make no sense of why it would need to be hidden. So they'd hidden this room for some reason. There's this pit in this room that goes like way, way down in the ground. And we know about this missing girl who was kidnapped. So when you put all of those together, it definitely points a picture, almost too clear of a picture at the parents. But the fact that these things exist, it's like, okay, well, in what scenario would the parents not be in the wrong? And they have all this stuff. And that's kind of the battle that you go back and forth with the entire movie.
So Peter then tells the little girl that he wants to see her in person, but at first she's like, fuck no, I'm so ugly you will scream at the first sight of me. But once Peter promises that he won't freak out, she decides to compromise, telling him about a hole in the wallpaper that he can peek through. Ghostwatch needs to take notes because that is a glory hole.
So I literally almost put in my notes, but the only reason I didn't was because of how low it was. But I was gonna say this the second week in a row we've gotten a glory hole.
Yeah. So as Peter struggles to see all the way into the dark hole, he gets suddenly shocked by the sight of an eye peering back at him, which sends him flying across the room. He then asks who she really is, and she responds, "I'm your sister, and I have been waiting for you to get big enough." And he then asks, big enough for what? And she says, to move the clock in the parents' bedroom that blocks the door, keeping me trapped in here. So basically, the parents have this older sister who they have never told him about, locked up in the walls of this house, and she needs Peter to help her escape. And now that we know that it is his sister, throughout the rest of the story, we will be calling her by her actual name, which is Sarah.
Yeah, which is, for a first watch, really throws you for a loop because
you think she's this other girl.
Yeah. You think she's the kidnapped girl. You start to think, well, did the girl that went missing, was that their daughter? And, Peter was too young or wasn't born yet, so he don't remember when this thing happened. But it was actually his sister that went missing in the neighborhood. Is this even actually happening? Like, how much of this is Peter's possible imagination? Yeah, a whole lot of throwing you for a loop. Like, this is a bomb dropped in the middle of the movie.
100%. So the next morning, we see Peter jarred awake by banging on his door. He then sits up and yells hello, but gets no answer. The door then slowly opens on its own where it reveals that there's no one there, allowing him to see straight into his parents' bedroom where this clock is sitting. Peter again yells hello but gets no response when out of nowhere he sees Carol quickly dart across the hallway as the lights shut off, putting him even more on edge. While now staring into the dark abyss of the hallway, he begins to hyperventilate when suddenly his dad calls his name from the corner of the room. Peter then slowly looks in that direction where he sees his father standing in a dark shadow, making a clicking sound while displaying this overly happy smile on his face and rapidly blinking his eyes. As the camera then zooms in, Mark says, "Look at what you have done to your mother," which causes Peter to snap back at the doorway, where he immediately spots his mother standing in the hallway, arms straight down by her side, fingers completely spread out, with glowing eyes and a huge smile, which in my opinion is one of the scariest things in the whole movie. The sight of this causes Peter to completely freeze in fear when suddenly the smile morphs into an angry face as she then begins running full speed in his direction. But right before she makes it past the doorway, the lights go black and she disappears. She then leaps out of the darkness onto Peter's bed, grabbing his head and forcing it down into the pillow, causing him to freak out when he is suddenly hugged by his real mother, who immediately begins to comfort him, revealing that it was all a nightmare. Definitely one of the most scariest scenes in this whole movie and a personal favorite of mine.
Yeah. Anthony Starr, like the teeth clicking, like just the super creepy fucking standing in the corner clicking his teeth for no reason. Probably at least in the top 2 or 3 creepiest scenes of the whole movie.
So after that, we then cut to 11 p.m. that night where we see Peter laying in bed talking to Sarah. And she basically says that she managed to escape the locked room but still can't get out from behind the walls. And their mom and dad hates her, and once they get tired of her, they are going to kill her and put Peter behind the wall. Well, Peter adamantly disagrees with this, saying that their mom and dad would never kill anyone. And this is where Sarah drops a bomb, as she tells him that they already have, and if he wants proof, to check the pumpkin patch. So the very next day, that is exactly what he does, but right as he thrusts the shovel into the ground, hitting something hard, we see Carol checking his room, where she realizes that he isn't in there. She then looks out of his window where she spots him digging in the patch and immediately yells for him. Peter then gets down on his knees, brushing away the loose dirt, where he is shocked to find a child-sized skull buried just a few inches under the topsoil. But he doesn't have much time to figure out what to do because he knows his mom has spotted him and is certainly on the way. And just a few seconds later, a panicked Carol swings the back door open, yelling his name, but Peter quickly spins around holding a small pumpkin, telling her that he wants to carve a jack-o'-lantern since he can't go trick-or-treating. Thankfully, he manages to play this off smooth, causing Carol to drop her guard and head back inside. Later that day, while Carol is in the kitchen, we see a now very upset Peter sitting in his room as Sarah tells him the story of what happened to the missing girl on Halloween night. So she starts this story off by telling him that this takes place before she was locked in the secret room. And one night, the little girl came to their door trick-or-treating, where Sarah realized that this was her chance to escape. So she opens the door for the little girl and asks her to please help her get away from her parents. Unfortunately, though, Mark and Carol saw this and quickly snatched the girl up and killed her so she could never tell anyone about the abused Sarah, where they then hid the body in the backyard and locked their daughter away for years. This pushes Peter over the edge, where he announces that he is getting Sarah out of there so they can both run away together. But Sarah immediately asks him how he is going to pull that off, where he then pulls out his math test, looks at Miss Devine's phone number, and tells his sister that he knows someone who can help. While his mother is still down in the kitchen, Peter sneaks into his parents' bedroom where they keep one of the phones, quietly dialing Miss Devine's number. Once she answers, Peter, in a light whisper, tells her that he needs her help. But before he can explain, he turns around where he is stunned to see his now very angry mother standing there. Carol quickly snatches away the phone and makes up a story about how Peter missed her so much that he decided to give her a call, but now he seems to be too embarrassed to talk. Carol then wishes her a happy Halloween and slams down the phone, immediately turning around and scolding her son.
Bro, the way she covers up this conversation on the fly without even like an ounce of hesitation would scare the shit out of me.
That look she's giving him as she's like making this shit up. And it's one of those like lies that I'm sure Miss Devine does not believe, but there's nothing that you could take from that conversation to tell the authorities that would make them go over there.
Yeah, there's nothing that is, although she knows she's probably lying, there's nothing unbelievable in what she said.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she comes up with a perfect cover-up. Like, how could you possibly cover up that him asking for help?
Yeah,
like,
calling and asking for help.
If I was in that situation, I would be like, oh my God, what am I gonna say? Like, how could I possibly ever play this off? But the mom does it with no problem. no hesitation, no challenge. Like, she makes up a lie, the best lie that she could to explain that away immediately. And but that would scare me.
Yeah, definitely creepy. So she then grabs his arm and drags him to his room, but when she pushes him in there, she notices the loose wallpaper covering the hole. And as she peels it back and sees the dark black circle, she instantly knows that he has discovered his sister and most likely knows about the dead girl in the backyard. Carol basically has a mental breakdown after this, screaming at Peter to tell her what Sarah told him, but he is in shock at seeing his mom act this way and doesn't answer. A now very distraught Carol stumbles to her bedroom where she tells him to just wait till his father gets home, slamming the door behind her.
This is a super important scene because everything so far points to these parents are acting weird. We find out they got like this secret room in the basement. They probably killed this little girl. Then, even if you try to give them any benefit of the doubt, then we get the discovery of the body. So you're like, okay, the parents are weird. They are abusive. They did murder this little girl. And then here we get this shot, just as you think like his mom is at her craziest with this made up excuse for this phone call, and she's super mad. The way she goes from angry mom about to punish him to legitimately terrified and locks herself in her bedroom is the first sign that, okay,
Something else happening.
what else
Yeah.
is going on here? Like, the mom is legitimately petrified. Like, if she was wanting to cover up a body that she was afraid that now he knew about, she would do it by punishing him or putting him in timeout. But when she finds out that he knows about his sister, she immediately locks herself in the room and has the sound of just the fear of God in her.
So we then cut to later that night where we once again see Peter laying in bed as Sarah calls out to him. She then tells him that she just heard mom and dad talking and he has to act fast because they plan on killing both of them soon. Peter, realizing he has to do something, then sneaks out of his room while Mark and Carol discuss the situation downstairs. After sitting on the steps, he then hears his father say, "We have to clean house, no more temporary solutions." And right as he is saying this, Carol spots her son hiding on the stairs. Peter then takes off running, jumping back into his bed, but is soon joined by Mark, who tells him when he gets home from work tomorrow, he needs Peter's help in the pumpkin patch because there is a problem they need to deal with. Which, of course, causes Peter's stomach to drop, believing his father is going to kill him. We then jump to the next day where we see Peter and Mark standing in the backyard looking at a large hole surrounded by a ton of rotting pumpkins. I don't think this is outright said, but I am assuming Mark removed the girl's body. I think that's what he meant by, cleaning house, and now there's a big hole where this body was. I'm assuming he was like, fuck, we got to get rid of the body just in case our kid tells somebody.
I think that going a little deeper, I think whenever he said clean house, they're going to kill the sister. There's no more, he says, no more temporary solutions.
I mean, that could be true.
So when you look back at the scene where they're talking about killing the rat, he says sometimes you have to make hard decisions. And he says it in a way, like I said, he's very, very sincere in that moment. And I think that when the stuff happened with the sister, because it was their daughter, they couldn't kill her. So they locked her away because they just didn't know what to do. It was a temporary solution. They locked her away. And when he said no more temporary solutions, it was because it was time to kill Sarah. Is the sister's name?
Sarah.
It's time to kill Sarah. He dug this hole, this body up to put Sarah in there. And this is why Sarah is pushing for Peter to act now, because she knows her time is coming to an end. There's no more keeping Sarah at bay.
So Mark then explains that most of the pumpkins have gotten a disease causing them to rot, and in order to save the rest of them, they must bury the bad ones and hope the next batch is better. Kind of like what they did with their daughter.
Yeah.
While they are doing that out back, we then see a dark red van slowly driving down the road where it eventually stops in front of Peter's house. As the camera zooms into the vehicle, we see it is full of teenagers who are briefly scoping out the situation. The driver then asks somebody in the back if this is the right house. As a younger boy then says yeah, he then leans to look out of the window, and it is revealed to be fuckface Brian, who has brought his older cousins to seek revenge on Peter for breaking his leg. They then drive off to wait it out, planning to come back at night while everyone is trick-or-treating. Next, we cut to a few hours later, where we once again see Peter and his parents sitting at the table preparing to eat dinner. Carol then fills everyone's bowl up with homemade soup she made, while Peter and Mark remain silent. There's a lot of tension in this scene. Mark wastes no time digging in, despite the fact that his son and wife are just staring at their food, when suddenly the doorbell rings with the first trick-or-treater of the night, which instantly sets off Carol, who then power walks over to the door and yells at the children to go away. So once she returns to the table, she starts eating her soup, which I know they say it's soup, but it looks like fucking oatmeal to me.
Yeah, it's some gross looking food regardless. This looks like dinner in 1920.
So
You would think for somebody who hates trick-or-treaters so much, she wouldn't have Halloween decorations outside the house.
yeah, or put a sign that says go away. So Mark and Carol are eating this soup, and Mark, who makes sure to compliment his wife's cooking first, asks if she did anything different to the soup this time.
Smart man.
And a totally confused and frustrated Carol says no and then tastes it for herself. And as she swishes it around in her mouth, we see a weird look appear on her face. She then scoops another bite onto the spoon and smells it, where she remarks that somehow it smells like cinnamon, which might sound a little familiar. Mark then smells his spoon and agrees with his wife, but right before he goes to take another bite, he freezes, thinking back to their time in the shed a few days ago. He then looks over at Peter and notices that he still hasn't eaten any of the soup, and this is where it all comes together, sending him into a panic. So after putting two and two together, Mark then calmly asks his son if he did something to the soup, but fearing what will happen if he answers, Peter remains silent and just looks at the ground, which sends Mark into a rage, where he jumps up and grabs Peter's shirt, asking him over and over again. Peter finally snaps and just spits out, "You hurt my sister," which absolutely stuns Mark as he realizes his locked up freak of a daughter convinced his son to kill them. Mark then yells for Carol to call 911 immediately, as he suddenly begins to have sharp pains in his stomach. But unfortunately for them, once she reaches the phone on the wall, she realizes the cord has been cut. Peter, who is now scared to death at what's about to happen, begins backing away towards the staircase. Mark then doubles over again, forcing him to grab the table to keep from collapsing, where he suddenly starts puking black liquid all over. Carol is shocked at the sight of her husband screaming in pain as he throws up gallons of this black stuff, when he suddenly collapses face down in the puke and slides off the table and dies. We then cut to Peter watching this from the living room, where he sees the shadow of his mother grabbing a butcher knife and beginning to run towards him. Which, by the way, I love the butcher knife shadow.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, almost cartoonish, I guess, but it's like in a good way, like a nice touch.
It had a touch of Psycho to me.
Yeah. So Carol, now holding a huge knife, starts chasing Peter up the stairs, where she manages to grab his leg right before the top. But before she can stab him, she begins violently puking just like her husband. After a brief pause, she then lunges towards Peter again, but he quickly kicks her away, which sends her tumbling down the steps, landing at the bottom with the butcher knife firmly stuck into her abdomen. Peter then slowly stands up, looking down at his mother's now lifeless body, and decides to head down and get the key for the locked door off of her belt. But as he goes to walk away, Carol has one last message for her son as she looks up at him and says, "Don't let her out." But kids are dumb, and that is exactly what he goes to do.
Yeah, the fact that, like, her dying words were not to let her out is horrifying. Like, as a viewer, like, at this point, okay, he killed the parents, but if her dying words were, "Whatever you do, like, do not let her out," it's scary thinking, like, what has made them so afraid that's behind that door, where they are still trying to protect Peter. Like, even though she's dead, it's not going to make a difference to her. She's still begging him on her dying, last breath to not let this girl out. And from Peter's perspective, even if he recognizes that and thinks like, "Oh fuck, what have I done? What if this thing is bad?" What do? You have no choice but to go through with the rest of the plan now. Like, you have killed your parents. Like,
Yeah, you're in a bit of a pickle.
even if you think you may have fucked up, you have no choice but to unlock that door and hope that you were right, because you're a kid and you literally, you've committed now. You've killed your parents. Like, you have to open that door.
So once he arrives at his parents' bedroom, he pushes the large clock out of the way, revealing a small wooden door, and Sarah is standing right on the other side, ready to finally be free. He then places the key in the lock and turns it, stepping back about 10 feet, eagerly waiting to see what is going to come out of the dark black exit. And the first thing he sees is a pair of glowing eyes with a very wide mouth full of teeth, which instantly freaks him out, causing him to take off running to his bedroom, where he begins to hear a very creepy, evil laugh. And it is not the laugh of a child like Peter thought. This sounds much more like a older teenager or adult.
Yeah, I will say that for the director, this is how you build tension. When he opens his door up and it's just black as the door slowly opens, 10 out of 10 on building tension. And then when the eyes light up with that big creepy smile, super scary. I thought it was one of the scariest parts of the movie was just that wait for us. As a viewer, you've been waiting to see this thing
Most of the movie, yeah.
all movie, and then you finally get a taste of it, and then they make you wait and wait and wait, and then it is super creepy, and then that laugh is just so horrifying.
So Peter then barricades his door, where Sarah quickly tries to get in, and this is where we finally hear her real voice, which is very rough, grumbly, and most certainly evil. She also sounds like she's been smoking 10 packs of cigarettes a day. So she immediately begins taunting him from the other side of the door, asking him what it was like to watch them die, and revealing that she's the one who killed the missing girl years ago. But this is quickly interrupted by Brian and his cousins, who have now arrived to get some revenge. So some context real fast. So they don't have names, but they do have on these like creepy farm animal masks. So from now on, I will be referring to these dumbasses as whatever their mask is. So we have a pig mask, a cat mask, a rabbit mask, and they're all about to die. So while waiting on Peter to come out, the front door slowly opens, pretty much inviting them to come in, which they do. And once they're inside, we see that Sarah has quickly cleaned up the bodies of Mark and Carol in order to not scare these fucking idiots away before she gets the chance to kill them. Because as we now know, the reason that they locked her away for years is because she's like really into murder. So once they walk in, the house immediately seems too quiet, and they decide to split up and look for Peter. who at this point is still holed up in his bedroom where he hides under the bed. Pig Mask, who is more interested in destroying shit rather than looking for Peter, uses a bat to bash in the family's piano. But right as he is walking away, he hears something that catches his attention. As he turns and looks, he notices a big pile of hair with spiders in it resting on the piano that is slowly moving. But as he goes to investigate, two hands quickly grab his legs, pulling him under, where we instantly see a huge splatter of blood. And while this is going down, we see shithead Brian, who is still using crutches, slip in a large puddle of blood which is leaking from a storage space. Brian then looks down at his hands, quickly realizing they are covered in red stains, when suddenly the storage space door opens up, revealing Carol's dead body. But before he gets much of a chance to react, he hears the front door slam and something very large crawling around the house, heading towards one of the other guys. A few seconds later, Rabbit Mask yells no as he comes running around the corner, but he doesn't make it too far as he is quickly slammed repeatedly on the ground and pulled away where he is killed. We then get these creepy ass shots of Sarah crawling very quickly around the ceiling like a fucking spider, and I'm pretty sure at this point Brian has shit his pants at least twice. He then attempts to crawl away towards the door when he suddenly backs into this long thing of like dirty, matted hair, and when he looks up, Sarah drops down on top of him, and that is the end of shithead, fuckface, bully Brian. Thank God.
Yeah, fuck him. We end up seeing that he gets ripped in half and beheaded. Later on, when they're passing the body, he is in two pieces.
Awesome.
We know his head got taken off. And I still don't feel bad for him.
Nope. We then cut to Cat Mask Guy, who is upstairs when he hears Brian's screams, and he decides to go check it out, but is instantly struck with fear when he notices Brian's mask and crutches laying next to a large puddle of blood. He then begins yelling his name while slowly walking down the steps when suddenly we spot Sarah, who is quickly spider walking on the wall, crawling towards him and attacks. Peter, who is still hiding under the bed, hears this commotion as they fight when suddenly the cat guy's body comes stumbling around the corner without a fucking head. Trying not to scream, Peter holds his hands tight over his mouth when Sarah then crawls down the hallway on all fours into his room. She then gets up on his bed and starts to tell him a story. And she basically says that when he was born, their parents were so happy. When she was born, they both screamed. Mark then made a pit and cage for Sarah where she lived amongst the cobwebs and rats, which is where she learned how to climb, bite, and scratch. She also watched Peter where she learned how to manipulate him to do what she wanted. After that bit of info, she then places a jack-o'-lantern down next to his bed, revealing Cat Mask Guy's decapitated head inside. As Peter freaks out over the sight of this, she quickly grabs him, locking him in her old cage and leaving him to die. But lucky for him, not too long later, Miss Devine shows up after not being able to shake the feeling that something is wrong. After finding the door slightly open, she cautiously heads inside where she immediately spots some of the evidence of Brian's murder, putting her even more on edge. She then hears someone crying in the kitchen, but as soon as she turns the corner, there is no one there except for a long strand of matty, dirted hair that is moving. Sarah then comes running up behind her, quickly slashing Miss Devine's leg, causing her to fall to the floor in pain, where she then starts to crawl towards the door, but as she turns back towards the kitchen, she is horrified to see Sarah spider walking right towards her. Very creepy scene. Miss Devine then manages to grab a fire poker and get to the front door, but right as she is about to escape, she hears Peter yelling for help. Nope, I would be like, the best thing for Peter is for me to get out of here and call the fucking cops. So she ends up following his voice upstairs where she is able to talk to him through the little hole in his wall. And right off the bat, he tells her to get the fuck out of here, but she, of course, refuses to leave. This conversation is pretty quickly cut short, though, as Miss Divine hears Sarah running down the hallway, heading straight for them. Thankfully, though, she is able to move quick and get the bedroom door barricaded before she could make it in, forcing Sarah to head to their parents' room to go back through the tiny locked door and go after Peter. Before she can make it to him, though, Miss Divine manages to bust a big hole in the wall, allowing her and Peter to escape out the front door. But once Miss Divine gets off the porch, she turns around to see Sarah holding Peter by the hair in the doorway, where she quickly slams the door. We then cut to Peter waking up in the pit where Sarah spent many years alone, when suddenly Sarah crawls down towards him and gets in his face and tells him that she was born this way and nobody loves a monster. And this is where we finally get to see her face, which is very creepy looking. I've seen a lot of people talk shit about this face reveal, with almost all of them claiming that this is just really shitty CGI. But in fact, this is a practical mask that was made for the actress to wear. You can see it in the behind the scenes stuff. The mistake they made, in my opinion, though, is they used CGI for the eyes, which is why I think, most people assume the whole thing's CGI and they don't like it.
Yeah, I think that and it being too fast. Like, they show it too quick for you to look at it and be able to tell it's a practical effect. Because they flash it so quick and there is the CG eyes, it automatically in your head makes you think the whole thing was CGI. As opposed to if you got to sit and look at it for a couple seconds, you'd be able to see that it is a practical effect.
So this conversation is cut short by Miss Divine showing up to save Peter, but it becomes apparent pretty quickly that the hot teacher has underestimated her opponent, as we see her kicking Miss Divine's ass right off the bat. But as she is throwing her across the room, her 20 feet of gross-ass hair has dropped down into the pit with Peter, who then uses it to climb up and join the fight. Once he gets to the top, he continues to hold Sarah's hair, allowing Miss Divine to beat the shit out of her with the fire poker. And after many hits to the abdomen, Sarah finally abandons this plan and just rolls back into the pit, where Peter quickly slams the metal door shut, trapping her once again. Right as the kid and the teacher turn to run away, Sarah changes back to her little girl voice, yelling out his name and begging him not to leave her. Once it becomes clear that he is definitely not going to let her back out, she switches back to her cigarette voice, telling him that this cage isn't going to keep her forever, and every night for the rest of his life he is going to be paranoid about every sound and every shadow, that it could be her finally coming back for revenge. We then see Peter living in a different house as he prepares to go to bed, but as he is about to move the covers over, he notices a long strand of hair poking out, when suddenly the silhouette of Sarah rises behind him. As he turns around, we see a look of shock on his face, and the screen fades to black. And that is the end of Cobweb.
Man, the creepy monologue about spending your whole life scared of me creeping in the shadows, like every crack that you hear, every noise in the middle of the night, you will be thinking that it's me. And I would realize that she is right.
Yeah.
And I would be like, we have to kill this thing. Like, I cannot live without pouring gasoline down in this hole and setting this shit on fire and killing her, because every day of my life I would think about this creepy ass thing escaping and coming for me.
If I was Miss Divine, I would be like, yeah, fucking right, because the first place I'm going is the police station, and you're going to end up in like a fucking government science lab pretty soon.
And if you remember right, she talks about and this goes back to the dad saying temporary solutions. First he tried to, I think, lock her in a room, and then he built the pit. And when that didn't work, he put me in the room behind the clock. And that goes to show you that the pit got to a point where it could no longer contain her. She had obviously learned to climb up the walls, and he had to move her to a different spot of the house, which was going to be another temporary fix. That's why when he tells the wife no more temporary fixes, I think he's dug that hole because he plans on killing her, which is why she pushes Peter into the poisoning and killing the parents that night, because she knew that her time was done. And the whole rat scene, that was the dad finally making that hard decision he had to make for the betterment of his family, which was to kill the creepy monster of a daughter.
All right, so ratings and kill count. We have a total of 6 kills. We have Mark, who is poisoned by Peter, Carol, who is poisoned and stabbed with a knife and fell down a bunch of stairs. The pig bully was dragged under the piano. The rabbit bully was dragged away. Brian was killed off screen, but like torn in half. And the cat bully was decapitated. All right, so favorite kill, you're up first. What you got?
I went with Peter's mom due to how important it is to the story. Like I said, you realize here, like, she wasn't going after him with the knife. She was going after, if Peter was to let her out with the knife. And with her dying words, she's still trying to protect Peter by telling him, like, please do not let her out. So it was just super important, and the fact that she literally, like, fell down the stairs and stabbed herself was a pretty gnarly way to die. The second, I went with the kid that gets pulled under the piano, because the fucking, like, instant blood splatter, like, guts and blood that you see is gnarly. Like, it makes you think, like, holy shit, what is this thing capable of?
Yeah, I went with the same exact thing. Carol is my number 1, and my number 2 is the pig mask guy. Definitely agree. All right, rating. What are you giving it?
All right, so I rated this thing a 4. I think originally I gave it like a 3.9 when we did it for the yearly countdown. I think it's extremely creepy, slow burn, has that very, like, independent feel that I love. A great gloomy fall atmosphere. The cinematography was amazing. The very gloomy gray with these touches of orange. Just the color palette was amazing. The way they shot everything really low and then made the walls bigger and the hallways longer to give you the perspective of our main character, which is this kid, was a genius thing to do. The acting was phenomenal, especially from the parents. Their dynamic really kept you guessing the entire movie. Like, from the beginning, you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, you don't know what's going on, but you know there's something sinister under the surface. And then, even when you think that they're fucked up and they're doing all these bad things, the way they play off of each other was great through all 3 acts of the movie. The whole ending, I thought, was super grim, and I love that. The fact that you find out that Peter's parents were, like, horrified of their daughter, and they were doing everything they could to live a normal life and protect Peter, given the circumstances. But you only find that out after Peter literally poisons them and murders them. That's super grim. I'm a sucker for grim endings. There's some things I wish that they could change. I thought the ending was a little anticlimactic, like the way they defeat her and pulling the hair and pulling her back into the hole. I thought that was kind of weak. I also wish that they, especially seeing the practical effects that they did for Sarah, I wish they would have showed her a little more and did a little bit less of the CGI crawling across the wall thing. I thought that they could have did the character reveal of her a lot better and a lot more scary.
Yeah, I agree with that. I gave the movie a 3.7. I, love the atmosphere, the Halloween fall vibes. They absolutely nailed that. I thought Anthony Starr and Lizzie Kaplan killed it. I mean, they did fantastic. The cinematography is amazing. The set design is amazing. But the story, for me, a little predictable-ish. Like I wish it had, it's not the predictable part. It's just, I wish it had like little more detail throughout it. And the ending is definitely missing something. Like, I'm not dead sure on what it's missing, but it falls a little flat for me. And I really wish that we could have gotten more on the backstory of Sarah and how she came to be this like freaky monster. Like, she says she's born this way. I would like, I want to get some answers about that. Like, how did these two regular adult people give birth to this? When you see her face, she's like a monster. Like, not like, just like regularly, deformed like a human. She's like a monster. And we don't ever get like any kind of backstory or explanation on any of that. But yeah, 3.7 for me. It is a good Halloween movie, but I do see why like some people, don't consider it a great Halloween movie. Definitely got some issues, but if you are, looking for movies to watch during October, get you in the spirit, this is definitely one that will get you into the spirit.
Yeah, it's dripping with fall and Halloween vibes. Like, it definitely has that fall atmosphere, the Halloween decorations, the pumpkins. Halloween is a centerpiece in this movie, along with the set design. Like, it's very like haunted house during October. Definitely a good Halloween movie. I actually really enjoyed the story. I thought everything was good. I agree, though. I wish we'd have got more of the backstory on how this thing came to be. Looking at it from the fairy tale perspective, it seems as if she was really bad. She was like a normal kid and just a bad kid, and she murdered this girl, and they locked her away and buried this girl's body, trying to cover up this girl being murdered by their daughter. And over time of her living with the rats and the spiders, she kind of transformed into this monster the way she explains it. She says she was born a monster, but the years of living down there with those really like turned her into what she is. So when you look at it from a fairy tale perspective, it makes sense that she was this normal bad kid that murdered this girl and they locked her away, and this is what she physically became over time. But yeah, my biggest gripe is the ending, man. It's just, I know you said you couldn't put your finger on it. There's just something missing. It's very anticlimactic for me.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that, the movie itself, but especially the ending, like, is just lacking some detail. Like, if we could have just got some more detail and, kind of a better end, like a better fight scene than what we got. But yeah,
I also hated the bully's family coming in the house thing.
agree. 100% agree. They're just cannon fodder.
Yeah, it was just written in there for the kills to show what this thing is capable of. And I get that the story needed that, like we needed to see what she was capable of, but I thought it could have been written in a different way to where it wasn't like they break into this house and just start breaking things. Super unrealistic.
Why would they think Peter was there by himself? He's 8.
Yeah. Yeah, that part I wasn't a fan of. And then the reveal of Sarah, I thought could have been way, like, instead of giving us slight flashes of her, I want to see her and I want her to look so scary that you can show her on camera for 10 seconds and it's just that much more horrifying. Like a great example of that is The Exorcist. When you look at Reagan, like the longer you see her, we don't need tricky camera work or anything like that because she's so horrifying on her own. A better reveal. I wish they would have went in a different direction with that. And then just the whole how they trap her is very anticlimactic.
Well, that is our opinion on Cobweb. Once again, we thank you guys for listening. Please give us a follow or like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website, check out the socials, check out the store. Tell a friend, a family member, or your hot Halloween-loving teacher about the show, and we hope to see you next time.